Thank you very much. And may I, first of all, thank Air Marshal Chopra for having invited me here today and to be part of this, to be chairing this very distinguished panel. But I'm particularly happy to be chairing this panel because each of the panelists is a very close friend of mine. And General Hasnain and I, we know each other now for many years and have been together in many seminars and panels. Air Vice Marshal Deswal and I were colleagues in Islamabad from 2013 onwards. And Ambassador Ajay Bisaria is an old colleague but was also High Commissioner in Islamabad and is in that sense also old Pakistan hand. So I can't think of a better panel to discuss India-Pakistan relations and India-Pakistan dynamics. We had an engrossing first session earlier in the morning, but may I begin by saying that generally in India, it is easier to analyze Pakistan today and examine and talk about and reflect on the multiple crises it is going through. And there is a general consensus in India about the quality and the intensity of the crisis which Pakistan is going through. So it is much easier to do that than to realistically assess policy options for India as we look ahead. And we are now talking about a relationship which is historically the most negative of all our bilateral relationships, and certainly Pakistan is the most recalcitrant of all our neighbors. So as I said, we have the right and a most formidable panel to discuss this, and I don't wish to anticipate what each of the panelists will say. I thought I'll very briefly sketch out the India-Pakistan context as I see it today, and to set the stage in a sense for more substantive interventions by the panelists. Since mid-2016, the India-Pakistan relationship is characterized by a sustained and sharp downturn. We have today a situation of reduced and downgraded diplomatic representation, a total ban on trade, virtually zero social and cultural contacts with highly restrictive visa policies, and again, virtually zero or perhaps very little political contact. There is alongside this a toxic atmosphere in both countries about perceived acts of omission and commission by the others. Now, you will all be aware that none of these factors in themselves is either individually or collectively new in the India-Pakistan context. All of this has happened many times before. But the post-2016 downturn stands out for the fact that it has gone on for so long, almost 8 years now. In the past, downturns, and even more severe downturns because of formal conflict situations, the downturns were of much shorter duration, and a cyclical pattern in the relationship had been more characteristic. In the present case, the downturn appears to be secular. Now, it is true that it is not as if there are no contrarian features in the post-2016 period. There are some positive developments which don't fit in with the rest of this negative downturn situation. You have the opening of the Kartarpur Sahib corridor, again a major step which we sometimes don't fully take into account the significance of. You have a somewhat mature reaction, surprisingly mature reaction by both India and Pakistan after a mistaken missile launch, when an escalatory situation, which otherwise would have been expected and had in fact in the normal pattern, in the normal committed stroke which you see in India-Pakistan relations, that escalatory situation did not happen. Similarly, you had the conclusion of the reaffirmation of a ceasefire on the LOC. Again, very surprising because of the fact it took place in a potentially two-front situation. Your relations with China were going through a very bad patch on account of developments on the LAC. The situation with Pakistan had seen a sharp downturn because of developments in J&K, etc., etc. In the midst of that, you have a reaffirmation of the ceasefire and the line of control. So it is not as if post-2016 there are no contrarian developments. They are. But I would say that on the whole, these contrarian developments or these relatively positive developments are dwarfed by the overall negativities that have predominated in the period since 2016. So what does this mean? To many in India, this sustained downturn since 2016 appears like a new normal. But this is now the kind of relationship which we are going to see with Pakistan in the medium and short term, in the medium term. Now, there are good reasons for this. All of us are deeply frustrated by the multiple failures of powerful Indian political initiatives to improve relations with Pakistan. And because of that frustration, this sense that this prolonged downturn perhaps is the best way of dealing with Pakistan, that sentiment is there with many of us. There is also a growing asymmetry in both economic, political, and diplomatic terms between India and Pakistan. Pakistan's visible descent into chaos and instability are also among the factors which cement for many the conclusion that this phase since 2016 is the best way of dealing with Pakistan. And this would mean that you reduce your political, cultural, and diplomatic interface to the minimum, rely on kinetic measures to deter terrorism, use your diplomatic heft to isolate Pakistan internationally, since its obduracy and negative approach to India at the regional and international level is to be expected. So this package of measures is believed to be by many to be a good policy mix for dealing with Pakistan as we look ahead. Now, it is worth. It's not this argument that this is the best policy mix is quite a powerful one, and one shouldn't dismiss it out of hand, because what is also characteristic of the post-2021 situation is a certain minimum stability in the relationship. Despite the bad atmospherics and the toxicity in the narratives, the ceasefire on the LOC has maintained itself, and that has given a basic stability, minimum stability to the relationship, notwithstanding the prolonged and sustained downturn in relations and the freeze in almost every aspect of the relationship otherwise. So this new normal is something which we have to think about. How does this approach square with three important dimensions of the India-Pakistan interface: the military, the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and finally the diplomatic interface? Now, is this new normal the best policy mix? Because the question could arise that you do not bring into it the other strengths which India has in dealing with the rest of its neighborhood, in particular your economic profile or your cultural profile. If you restrict your dealings with Pakistan on a narrow security interface, is that the best policy mix? This really is the question which we have to address as we look ahead in India-Pakistan relations. The second point which I wish to, again, briefly touch on in the context of looking at India-Pakistan dynamics and India-Pakistan relations as we look ahead is the broader context of regional and neighborhood relations. Now, all of us here will appreciate how much our ideas of neighborhoods and regional stability have been impacted by recent developments. There are different ways of looking at the Russia-Ukraine war, and some may see it as a breakdown of great power communication. Others may see it as Western hubris in overlooking core Russian security interests, or you can see it as a reassertion of an older geopolitical fault line of Russia versus the West. But one takeaway certainly is from the war, is that this is a classic example of a trajectory in neighborhood relations which nobody would really wish to opt for if they had the power of hindsight. Nobody wants to go down the direction of where Russia and Ukraine have gone. It is too early to say who will be the winners in this conflict, whether it will be NATO, whether it will be China, perhaps even the US. But there's absolutely no doubt about one fact, that the two main losers are going to be Russia and Ukraine. And they already are Russia and Ukraine. Now, similarly, we can look at the situation of the war in Gaza and the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And again, here, similar takeaways are obvious. Security breakdowns in the form of black swan events cannot be foreseen, and most analysis of Israeli policy today would acknowledge that it failed to act diplomatically and politically when the ground was most in its favor. Was this hubris brought about by an inflated sense of confidence in its security grid and its new diplomatic heft in the form of the outreach it had made with other Arab countries, and an exaggerated sense of weakness of its opponents and the sense of disunity and lack of direction amongst the Palestinians? But really it is something which we have to think about, because as I said, neighborhood situations have their own logic and in many ways are unique the world over. What is common amongst them is that neighborhoods are the most sensitive and challenging part of any country's foreign policy. So what should be the appropriate policy mix for Pakistan remains a question that we have to remain engaged with. Does the post-2016 approach, a security-heavy approach, constitute the best mix? Or are there other combinations we must consider as we look ahead, given the nature of the threats that we face from Pakistan? It's nobody's case that we do not face threats, and very serious threats of national security and otherwise. What is the best policy mix to address those threats, given our own national interest, clinically evaluated? That is really the question which we have to confront when we talk about India-Pakistan relations. So with these remarks, I'll now turn to our panelists and may I begin with Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain to talk about Pakistan's war in Kashmir and the promotion of the Khalistan situation. Thank you.
Morning and Jai Hind. You have to excuse me for my throat slightly, but nevertheless, 15 minutes, 15 to 16 minutes, nothing more than that. I wish there was a clock in this room, but anyway, I've kept a watch here to make sure about it. I've got it here. I've kept myself. Thank you, Center for Air Power Studies. Always a pleasure. 5th year, this is when I've been coming here and speaking on Pakistan or something related to Pakistan. It's always such a great pleasure doing it. And I think the stage has been very well set by Ambassador Raghavan. I will go along with him. The new normal exists. But within the new normal, there will always be threats. After all, 26/11 was also in the middle of a new normal in 2008. The new normal, which started from 2004-05 onwards, it ended the normal with 26/11. So that is something that we've always got to keep in mind. Can't forget the Israel-Hamas situation, where with everything in place, everything seems seemingly stable, Hamas could go about doing what it did. And despite Pakistan's economy being in doldrums or whatever, how threats can still continue to persist. That's the broad line that I will be taking. You've just gone, I'm sure Article 370 is very much in the minds of everyone. You've just seen in the last few days after the Supreme Court ruling on it. I wrote in the Times of India yesterday, I hope you had read it. That would have given you a lot of insight into the policy aspects we need to look at. Broadly, if you just see this, 370 did help Pakistan pursue a sponsored proxy war. Not from any other point of view except that it gave a sense of exclusivity. We may deny it, of course. There was a question on it, which was a pertinent question, I think, We may deny it, that it had really no significance, it had already been marginalized, but still it gave a sense of exclusivity to the Kashmiri Awam. And that idea of Azadi, which was there in the mind, that I think with this final ruling on 370, and as time goes by, that idea of Azadi will start getting eroded. Post 5th of August 2019, when the decision was taken, the situation normalized. But the most important thing is that there was nothing permanent about it. Only Pakistan's calibration capability has been restricted. That we must remember, because you must remember the campaign in South Kashmir, how it went on for the better part of the last 2-3 years, how it has all come together into the area of the Pir Panjal, and I shall talk about it a little more subsequently. The important adage I want you to remember is this: the absence of violence is not peace. Lots of people go away with this misnomer. Statistics compared to 2014, 17, 18, 19 say, "Dekho, sab kam ho gaya hai. We are now peaceful." Don't even look at that argument. You have to look at the networks. Are the networks still very much alive? And this is something we have been very weak at. Marginalizing, compromising the networks. We went after them in subsequent years, and we have still not completely taken them apart. That's an aspect to remember. And that's why I'm repeating it again. You can see it here. Normalcy is there, but still there's a man with a weapon here, showing the absence of violence is not peace. This is a very tenuous peace. Ceasefire is in place, but no guarantees. Ambassador Raghavan just told you this. All parameters are down. A great tourist season. This very sincere Lieutenant Governor, working hard, reasonably clueless bureaucracy, let me tell you. Because the bureaucracy has all been turned over. Most of it has been turned over. There's a new bureaucracy there, not in touch with the people. Very good administrators, not in touch with the people. People are yet unwilling to commit on Article 370. If you want to go up to the man in the street and say, "You think it's a very good thing Article 370 has been removed?" he will tell you 10 stories on your face, different stories. And you can never say what is the final opinion. Low infiltration in Kashmir, increase in Jammu, we'll talk about it. And the education sector has hugely improved. My university, I can tell you, I keep monitoring it from time to time, the kind of demands coming in. We are getting people from Kerala and Assam coming to Kashmir to study today. Radicalization is very much alive. Sorry. But I remind you of this. Don't have to read all this. Bajwa was one man who I thought understood South Asia rather well. He understood the shortcomings within Pakistan. In both 2021 and in 22 before he retired, he gave out these subtle messages. The aspect that Pakistan has to come to terms. And it is in his time that the ceasefire was effected. It remained successful right through. The question is that, is the current crisis in Pakistan hurting it so much that it can change its perceived existential strategy? That is the question we should ask ourselves. But when you examine it in depth, you realize Pakistan's cockiness is not subsiding, even after the political, social, and economic crisis. If you read the media, if you meet people, Pakistanis abroad, etc., you will realize that cockiness is still very much there. The belief we did not lose the 1971 war. Can you imagine that? That is a belief still there, very much existent in the Pakistan army. General Asim Munir, not yet shown his strategic face, to my mind. He is still managing internally. He has not given anything on what is his strategic outlook. Remember, I remind you, the launch of proxy hybrid war with terror as its core and non-state actors as key players was considered a strategic compulsion for Pakistan when it was launched, to wreak revenge for 1971 and keep India off balance. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed from this. One of the prime components of the proxy hybrid war against India has been information and influence operations. And in today's world, if you're thinking that wars are only fought conventionally, then you've got to think again. You're looking at Ukraine, where a conventional war is on with all kinds of hybridities mixed into it. Information, you are not really getting the real picture of Ukraine ever in your media. You really don't know what is happening on the ground in Ukraine. Because so deeply is information warfare ingrained into it, and that's exactly how things are happening in Kashmir also. So, issues that affect Pakistan negotiating the difficult times. This prevailing perception that a break from the strategic jihad will compromise national interest. Agar band kar diya, all the investment of 30 years, 35 years into Pakistan, into Kashmir, is going to be lost. The new and younger generation find no reprieve from ideology. The army will not confront them. Although they talk about counter-radicalization and programs and things like that, no one confronts them. It continues to believe that Pakistan's comfiture lies in India's discomfiture. So it's not about war. It is about how to make you uncomfortable. The political community aligns with but has no control over the radicals. You see in Islamabad the number of times it has been, brought to a halt completely. Jammu and Kashmir is a solace in a bleak landscape. That is one place where they can do something, do a small act. At the moment, just remember Pakistan has got 3 priorities or 3 areas of strategic security interest. Afghanistan, internal security, Kashmir. Between 3 of them, it keeps getting prioritized, 1, 2, 3. When in 2016, after the surgical strikes, etc., suddenly Kashmir became number 1. At the moment, of course, Afghanistan is number 1. Internal security is number 2. And number 3 is Kashmir. Something happens in Kashmir, one of the terrorist groups does something in Kashmir, it will come back to number 1. So General Asim Munir is still finding his feet, and the FATF monitoring which coerced Pakistan to change its outlook, but only very, very partially. The Supreme Court verdict on Article 370 is likely to cause some dismay and some kind of turbulence in the Pakistani mind. It will definitely. We may expect some blunderous action from that direction without think through. This is something we should be prepared for. Mostly Pakistan never looks at conflict termination. Only how good can be the initiation. You saw Kargil. Did anyone even look at termination at that time? So Kashmir, what is the current situation? This is a little more in detail. Now we're looking at Kashmir and then we look at Jammu separately. Infiltration is under control with a layered grid, really under strong layered grid. Networks have been largely neutralized but still persist. Local governance has improved hugely. It has, there's no doubt about it. Tourism is on a high. Population is still on a cusp. The outreach is very high, but they're still on a cusp. Politically, it is quiet, and outcome is uncertain. And next 6 months, because of the directions of the Supreme Court, lots of political activity will start taking place. How does it manifest? Pir Panjal is marginally active, not hugely active, marginally active. Minorities, policemen, soldiers on leave, etc. are all under threat. In this area, Hamas-style operations, to my mind, not possible. Muslim population not close to the line of control, etc., unlikely to have anything in Uri or in Kupwara or in Tangdhar and places like that, unlikely. The shifting focus is all shifting southwards at the moment. This map explained a little better. If you look at this is the map which Srinagar on the top, let me show it to you here. Srinagar here, Pir Panjal, Hilkaka, Kokarnag. This is the area, Kokarnag, where you had recent operations. Hilkaka, Punch, Kalakot, this is the area. So now there are hardly any operations taking place here. Hardly any taking place here. It's all here. Primarily the broken forested area of the Pir Panjal. And there are some reasons for it we need to look at. Politically and ideologically, the war is still hybrid. There are infiltration leakages taking place in Jammu because all the formations which were here earlier which controlled infiltration have all gone away. They've all gone to Ladakh. Uniform force of the RR is sitting in Ladakh. I hope you know that. And 27 Div which had come from the east has gone away a long time back. 39 Div is not there also. So lots of depletion of forces. The Pir Panjal South is the playground for the terrorist influence today. An apparent resurgence of terrorism in voids along the Pir Panjal belt. There are lots of voids here. You can't help it. You don't have that many troops. The connection with Sikh militancy. No one has got evidence to say this at the moment. But the way drones have been continuing to be activated, 120 drones in a month, bringing in small consignments of warlike stores, etc. The connect between Kathua and Gurdaspur, this area, continuum, a Hamas-like threat live from Sundarbani southwards. I'll come to that on the map separately. Are major drawbacks, which will tell us where we need to look at in terms of policy. Insufficient innovation at the operational level. Operational level, that's the core level. We continue to be repetitive in what we are doing. We are in a tearing hurry at the tactical level. The hunt for terrorists, quick kills. I still remember Barkha Dutt asking me once, why is it taking 72 hours to kill 3 terrorists inside a building? I said, if you ask me, I will ask for 15 days to kill those. Why should I do it in 3 days and lose 5 of my men? Is there any requirement of doing it? Possessing intent but unable to conceptualize a doable communication strategy. Very, very weak at information warfare, communication strategy. Absence of all-of-government approach. The one which we used for the tunnel rescue at the moment. The typical all-of-government approach. That's what helped there. Hurry to dismantle what succeeds. Oh, why are you in a hurry to take away the RR from here? It's the best experiment that India has ever done in the military terms. You're in a hurry to dilute that strength. From 6 companies, we fought to keep 6 company battalions. Like the BSF. We're reducing it to 4 companies now. The war is not over. We are celebrating too early. The politico-military sync is not in tandem. Blunt, I'm so sorry to be transparent and blunt about it. So the potential of Hamas-type operations, someone asked me this, can it happen in our context? Very much it can happen, if they so wish to do it. This is the area. You start from the area of Rajouri, downwards as the population becomes more Hinduized, you find the percentage of Hindus higher. You come into this area of Jammu, Mira Sahib, Samba, etc. See the next one, Samba and Kathua, the lifeline of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the area. Why? You infiltrate at 12:30 at night from across one layer of the BSF. That's all there is there. Wire and BSF. Get to the road 10 kilometers away by 2 o'clock in the morning. Hijack any vehicle which is on that busy highway. And your scope goes to 80 kilometers to carry out a strike anywhere. 10 men can create mayhem, like 10 men created mayhem on 26/11. It can happen here too, also. The Khalistan factor. It needs no rocket science to comprehend this aspect. It was a maverick ideology of experimentation by disgruntled elements, exploiting just a few. And I continue saying this everywhere. It was not defeated by the Indian Army. It was not defeated by the Punjab police. It was defeated by the people of Punjab. The brave people of Punjab who did not support this idea at all. Proposed Khalistan maps do not go into traditional Sikh lands in Pakistan. Why aren't the traditional Sikh areas, Ranjit Singh's areas in Pakistan not also included in this? Obviously because Pakistan is sponsoring it. Sikhs living abroad find the idea romantic and very empowering. As Pakistani capability in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir has waned, it stepped up the foreign factor. This is just a factor of Pakistan's hybrid war, to my mind. The intent to label India a state against minorities. It helps them to do that from time to time. So reinforcing those arguments, India needs to take these attempts by Pakistan seriously. It's going against, hybridity goes against us. Yet we need not go over the top on this. We need to temper our response, judging the impact at all times. Need for a very strong communication strategy, exactly the same issue here. Something which we refuse to get into. And cultivation of foreign governments through roving ambassadors, special envoys, our fantastic former ambassadors who are all sitting here, who can be employed so well doing this kind of a job. And organization of demonstration of support from Sikhs abroad. If I can be permitted 1 minute more, all I want to say is this aspect of communication strategy which I keep harping on First of all, CAPS perhaps needs to take this up as a subject to have one more seminar someday. This is something which in India we are just not involved with sufficiently. If you really look at it, we need communication not in the armed forces, but from the apex levels of government. We need an authority like the authority I am with, National Disaster Management Authority. You need a communication strategy authority. Call it by any name you want. And you need to have lots and lots of different domains represented in it. Diplomatic, military, intelligence, academic, economic, everyone. And you need to draw out a policy of how to communicate. And at the tactical level of that, what to communicate at the end of it. We can talk on this till the cows come home. So, with that, I rest my case. Thank you very much.